After the first Friday the 13th movie did extremely well at the box office, the sequel was released a year later. In fact, it was actually 11 months and 22 days after the first film. Friday the 13th Part 2 essentially follows the same premise as the first film, except this time we have new characters and a new killer. Friday the 13th Part 2 may actually be one of the most important films of the series, because it's the first time that Jason is the killer. He doesn't have his signature hockey mask though, that wasn't added till the next sequel. The film has received mixed opinions from the fans. Some think it's one of the worst in the series, and some even think it's one of the best, surpassing the original. I think it's in the middle. There isn't much in it that makes it stand out above the crowd of sequels. I feel the film sometimes feels like a rehash of the previous film, just like The Hangover Part 2 did. The characters are not much better. In fact, I think they may be a little blander. The two surviving characters, or maybe one, I'm not really sure but we'll get to that later, are barely even in the film. We see them for the first 10 minutes or so and then they leave. They don't even come back until about 10 minutes before the end of the film. The characters we do get pretty much have no personality. You find yourself not knowing who to root for because there's very little time for each character. They increased the amount of characters from the first film and didn't really know what really to do with them. Some characters seem a little interesting, like Terry, who owns a little dog called Muffin. She isn't in the film for very long, but she seems like a pretty interesting character. Maybe I'm just saying that because she's the only character that gets fully naked. The two surviving characters, Ginny and Paul, that I think the film really wants to be the main characters, come back for the most confusing ending to be in a horror film since The Exorcist Part 2. Let's just go over the things that aren't confusing. Ginny is chased by Jason into Jason's cabin where he's hiding his mother's decapitated head. Ginny puts on his mother's jumper that she finds next to the head and pretends to be Jason's mother. Jason starts to believe her until Ginny goes to chop his head off. Paul comes in and tries to distract Jason so Ginny can stab him in the shoulder. Then they run away back to the cabin. Then they hear a sound outside, open the door and see it's Muffin, which makes no sense because two characters actually saw Muffin's dead body lying on the floor next to his guts. So how come he's alive? If he was dead earlier in the film, did a random vet come along, bring him back to life, stitch him back up, and then send him off to the other characters? When Ginny goes to pick up the dog, Jason jumps through the window, which is similar to the ending shock moment in the first film. It's probably the best bit in the whole film. And then the film fades to white and Ginny is being rolled out by paramedics. There is no explanation for Jason jumping through. They just completely ignore the fact that he just jumped through the window, and also they completely forgot about Paul and Muffin. So what happened? Was it all a dream or just reality? It doesn't make any sense. We're never explained what happens. They just expect everyone to understand it and move on. One other problem I have with this film is how it fades to white. It really hurts your eyes when you're watching it in the dark and all of a sudden some blinding bright light comes up. So, in conclusion, what did I think about the film? Well, it doesn't excel to where the original does, and it's kind of just a film for the people who missed the first film. There is nothing to make it the best film in the series, and there's nothing to make it the worst in the series. So, it's really hard to review because it's just kind of there. It is definitely bland, boring and forgettable at times, but it's nowhere near as bad as some of the sequels. I have to give it a D.